Before we launch the transit gateways, I just wanted to show you that I have all the instances in Session Manager. So this one is in Canada, which we did last video. This one is for UK, London, Brazil, and Australia. If you've got all these 4 instances in Session Manager, let's go and create a transit gateway. Let's go back to Canada. We're going to start with Canada. Go to Services and type in VPC. Now here at the bottom on the left, you have Transit Gateways. Then click on Create Transit Gateway. Name tag is going to be Global Services. Same thing for the description. For the options here, we're going to leave Amazon side ASN as this. DNS support, let's leave enabled. VPN, ECMP support, let's disable this. Route table association, let's leave enabled. And then for the propagation, let's disable as well. And if you're not understanding why I'm enabling some options and disabling the others, if I just go back to the challenge, so in step 5, here are the requirements for the transit gateway. So I'm just following this. Finally, auto accept shared attachments should be disabled as well. And then click on Create Transit Gateway. While we wait for this, let's do the same in the other 3 regions. Before we move on, I just wanted to quickly explain why we had to create 4 transit gateways. If you had all of your VPCs in a single region, let's say if all of these 4 VPCs were in Canada, then you would be able to have a single transit gateway. But because we're working with different regions, that's why you need to have 1 transit gateway per region, because transit gateway is a regional resource. Okay, next step is going to be to make sure that the VPC, which is the global service in this case, it's actually attached to our transit gateway. And if you want to attach a VPC to a transit gateway, you need a transit gateway attachment. So click on Create Attachment, select the transit gateway that you just created. For the attachment type, you see that there are 3, VPC, VPN, and peering connection. In our case, we want to attach a VPC to our transit gateway. So make sure VPC is selected. For the attachment name, let's call Global Services. Leave DNS support. IPv6 support you don't need. And then for VPC ID, let's select Global Services. Select both subnets. So that's okay. And then create attachment. Then again, we need to associate every single VPC of every single region to the regional transit gateway. So let's go to London. Okay, so basically for each one of the transit gateways, we attached the local VPC. So here we have Global Services VPC attached to the transit gateway. But now the transit gateways, they are all isolated, right? So the Canada transit gateway cannot communicate with the UK transit gateway because there is no link between them. So what we need to do now is create a peering connection, not for VPCs, but for transit gateways. To make things easier for us, we could create all the connections from Canada, but that means you would have to know the transit gateway IDs of all of the 3 regions. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to each one of the regions and we're actually going to create a peering connection to the transit gateway in Canada. So first thing we need to do is to go back to the transit gateway and copy the ID. So this is the ID of my transit gateway. So I'm just going to make sure this is copied. And then I'm going to start with London. In London, let's go back to transit gateway attachment. Let's create an attachment, select the transit gateway. And now for the attachment type, it's not going to be VPC because we want to peer transit gateway. So click on peering connection. So peering connection and then attachment name. I'm just going to call UK Canada. The account, it's still the same account, and you see here that you can actually peer transit gateways from different accounts. But in my case, I don't know about yours, but in my case, it's the same account. So I'm gonna select my account. The region, I wanna peer with Canada. So this is the target region. And then the transit gateway ID, the acceptor, is what we copied. Let's do that. Let's create the attachment. And basically, we're gonna have to do the same thing for all of the other regions. Okay, after creating the last one, let's go back to the Canada region, and you're gonna see a lot of attachments here. Yeah, so you see, right now you see 2, because the Australia one we just created, so it's still coming up. But for the first one, it says pending acceptance. So click on it. Actually, let me just refresh this first. Yep, so now we have more. Okay, so let's click on this one, pending acceptance, so you just accept. Now do the same thing for the second one. And finally, the same thing for the third one. What we did here is we went to each one of the regions and we peered them with Canada. If we had done the other way around, so from Canada we peer with all the other regions, that just means you would have to go to each one of the regions and accept. So that's why I did the other way, from all the regions to Canada, because then I can just accept everything in one go. Let's just give this a couple of seconds until the attachment becomes available. For transit gateways, there are 3 important resources that we need to be aware of. First one is the attachment, which we took care of now. The second one is the route table for the transit gateway. And the third one is the propagation. Let's take a look at the route table for the transit gateway. So make sure you're in Canada region, then go to transit gateway route table. And you see that there's only one route table, and this is actually the default route table that comes with the transit gateway. If you wanted to have your own route tables, you could do that. But this is basically just like the VPC. When you create a VPC with the subnets, you have a default route table for the subnets, but you can also create your own. So it's the same thing here. Now for a transit gateway route table, you have some important information here. So you have the associations, which means that which VPCs are associated with this route table. So you see that we have the global service VPCs plus all the 3 peering connections. For propagations and routes, let's get into that next. Let's take a look at propagation. So what is a propagation? So a propagation, when you create a propagation and you select, let's say the VPC, the attachment for the global services VPC, and you click on create propagation, when you click on routes, and just wait for this to refresh, you see the route for that VPC, which means that whenever traffic arrives at this transit gateway and it goes to this route table, it sees a route to the global service VPCs, so then the traffic will be able to reach that VPC. And this part is when things can start getting very confused. So I'm going to show you a diagram of how everything is going to be connected, and then we're going to try to understand how our route table is going to look like. This is the diagram of the solution. And here you see that we have the 4 transit gateways in each one of the regions. And these connections A1, A2, A3, A4, these are the VPC attachments that we created. Now A5, A6, and A7, these are the peering connection that we created. So in total, we're going to have 7 attachments all around these regions. Let's focus on the transit gateway in Canada first. Imagine that the traffic is coming out from global services. So the traffic goes out from global services all the way to the transit gateway. When it gets here, the transit gateway asks the question, which route table is associated with this VPC? And we already know because there's only one. But if you had more, you would have to take a look at the association. So because the VPC is associated with this route table, this is the route table for that VPC. Now, the next question is, what's the destination of the packet? And then what the transit gateway is going to do is it's going to take a look at the route table that is associated with the global service VPC, which is this one. And then it's going to take a look at the routes. Now, do you see any route to 10.116. whatever? We don't. So there's currently no route, which means that if you try to send the traffic or a packet from from global services all the way to UK, it's not going to work because there's no route. So what we need to do is to create a route. And I know that some people might try to create a propagation for the peering connection, but you can actually just create, you see, just there's only the VPC here. So you cannot create a propagation for a peering connections, which means that we're going to have to create the route ourselves, and it's going to be a static route. So click on create route. Now the CIDR, we're going to use the CIDR of the UK VPC, which is 10.116/19. So the CIDR is going to be 10.116/19. And now the attachment, it's going to be the attachment between the UK and Canada. Unfortunately, the name tag that we created in each one of the regions is not propagated to here, to Canada, which means that I'm just going to go to here to take a look at all the attachment that we have. I just need to find the UK one. So yeah, this one right here. So this one is London, and this is the attachment. So let's copy the attachment. Come back here and select this one. So this one is the London attachment. Let's create a route for that. And now we're going to create a route for all the other regions. So for Brazil, it's 10.120/20. And then the attachment is going to be, I believe, this one. This one right here. And last but not least, we're going to create for Australia 124, I believe, /18. Yep. Okay, perfect. So you see that we have one route which is of type propagated, and the other three are static. Now let's go back to the diagram and ask the same question. So when the traffic comes to the transit gateway, it's going to ask the question, is there a route for the UK, which is 10.116/0019? Yes, there is, because we just created. So it is right here. And this means that the traffic would be able to get all the way to the UK. Now, when the traffic goes to the UK, it reaches this instance, for example, and then it needs to go back all the way back to Canada. The questions that are going to be asked are exactly the same. So first one is, when the traffic gets to the transit gateway, it's going to ask, what route table this VPC is associated with? And is there a route to Canada? And that's exactly what we're going to take care of now. Let's go to London. This is the route table for the London region, for the transit gateway in London. And here we see two attachments, the VPC and the peering connection between UK and Canada. Now remember that we need to have a route back to Canada. So if we click on routes, there's nothing here, right? What we need to do first is create a propagation for that VPC that we created for the UK region. And secondly, we need to create a route back to Canada. So create a route. The CIDR is going to be 10.112/0023. And the attachment, here it's easier because we have the name tag. So UK, Canada, this is the attachment that we're going to send traffic to whenever the address is this. Create a route. And if you refresh, and there you go. So if the traffic reached UK from Canada and had to go back, there is a route back to Canada. And what we did here, we need to do exactly the same for South America and for Australia. Now there's only one thing left that we need to do. When the traffic leaves the VPC, how does it get to the transit gateway? Let's take a look at the routes for that VPC. I'm in Canada. I'm in the Canada region, so this is the route table for my global sources VPC. If I click on routes, you see that there's only a route for the local VPC, which means that if I try to send a traffic to the transit gateway, it won't get there because the transit gateway is not in my route table for the VPC. What you need to do then is to edit routes, add a route, and the destination is going to be anything pretty much. Of course, that if you try to send locally in the VPC, it's first going to get to this rule, but if it's anything else, it's going to be on this rule. So the target for this rule should be the transit gateway, which is right here, global services one, and click on save route. And also just make sure that this route table is actually being used by the subnet. If you click on route table in the subnet, you should see the transit gateway there. So this is for private A and for private B. Now the setup is complete for Canada. Let's do exactly the same, add this routed transit gateway in each one of the other regions. Now that we have everything in place, we should be able to go to the UK and ping the instance which is in Canada. Let's try that. Select this one, start session. Now from Canada, we should be able to ping the instance in the UK. And there you go. Now let's try the other way around. And there it is, it's all working. So we know that we can ping from UK all the way to Canada and vice versa. And it should be able to do the same with Brazil and Canada, Australia and Canada. But now let's say that I want to ping an instance. So this is the Canada one. Let's go to South America, Brazil. And what I'm gonna try to do is to ping this instance here from UK. Let's see what's gonna happen. So ping, and then this. You see that nothing is happening. And let's understand why. Change to the London region. Now go to Transit Gateway Route Tables and click on Routes. When the traffic comes from the UK and it goes to the Transit Gateway in the UK, the Transit Gateway takes a look at the routes here and see, okay, is there any route to Brazil? There isn't. There is only a route to Canada and a route back to the UK. So that's why UK cannot communicate with Brazil or Australia. But if you wanted them to communicate, then you would have to add Brazil here and then go to the Brazil region and add UK there. All right, so it seems that we have everything placed for the transit gateway so we can ping the instances using IP address. And next one, we should be able to ping using private domains. So what we're gonna do in the next video is to deploy the Route 53 resolvers.